Grandpa Ron here again. I hope you're all doing well and everybody's well and happy. Today we're going to get back into our very basic Bible study, the book of Joshua, and we're up to chapter 23. And now, as we approach this chapter, we saw that all the promised land has been divided. It hasn't all been occupied yet, but it's all been divided between the tribes. But, God told them, as we mentioned last time, that this would be a slow process, and they have to be patient. But all the major threats, military threats, have been eliminated. But now Joshua is getting older, and he's going to give his farewell speech, or speeches, to the people. Now, chapter 23, he calls the elders together, so the leaders, and he's going to talk to them in his farewell address. And then next time we'll look at chapter 24, where he talks to all the people together. But for today, let's look and see what he has to say to the leaders. Chapter 23, verse 1. Now it came about after many days, when the Lord had given rest to Israel from all their enemies on every side, and Joshua was old, advanced in years, that Joshua called for all Israel, for their elders, and their heads, and their judges, and their officers, and said to them, I am old, advanced in years. And we'll hesitate there for a second. When it says many days, some of the Bible commentators that have studied this for a long time have calculated that this is probably 10 to 20 years. They've eliminated all of the major military threats, but now a lot of years have passed by. They're still occupying territories. The countryside, people are taking over, but they haven't finished yet. But Joshua is now probably somewhere over 100 years old, maybe, and we're going to see that later, an exact statement of his age. But he's up there in years. But now that there's relative peace, they don't have any major military threats, it's time for him to give his goodbyes due to his age. So let's pick it up with verse 3. And you have seen all that the Lord your God has done to all these nations because of you, for the Lord your God is he who has been fighting for you. So God has done this for you, and he has won these battles for you. Notice that Joshua humbly, he takes no credit for this. It's all attributed to God and God's help. Verse 4. See, I have apportioned to you these nations which remain as an inheritance for your tribes, with all the nations which I have cut off from the Jordan even to the great sea, toward the setting of the sun. I've given you your properties. Okay. Verse 5. And the Lord your God, he shall thrust them out from before you, and drive them from before you, and you shall possess their land, just as the Lord your God promised you. So the Lord is going to keep on driving these people out of the land. Verse 6, a warning. Be firm then to keep and do all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, so that you may not turn aside from it to the right hand or to the left, in order that you may not associate with these nations, these which remain among you, or mention the name of their gods, or make anyone swear by them, or serve them, or bow down to them. We're going to see in the rest of this chapter, the next, Moses' great concern that they stay loyal to the one and only true God of Israel, the God of his fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's worried about them. Now remember, in prior chapters we've noticed that they didn't drive out all of these nations from some of the big cities. Instead, they made them slave labor, for example, And this is, I'm sure, has made Joshua concerned that they're not as zealous to complete what God has told them. And he's warning them, no, you need to stand firm. You should not associate with these people. You can't do it. And he's going to repeat this many times in this and in the next chapter. Verse 8. But you are to cling to the Lord your God as you have done to this day. For the Lord has driven out great and strong nations from before you, and as for you, no man has stood before you to this day. You've been victorious up to now because God has stood with you. Verse 10. One of your men puts flight to 1,000, for the Lord your God is he who fights for you, just as he promised you. Figure of speech. One of your men can defeat 1,000. But God has miraculously delivered their enemies into their hands and fought for them. It's not because each man is strong, it's because each man has trusted God. Verse 11, so take diligent heed to yourselves to love the Lord your God. Don't forget what he's done. Stick with him. For if you ever go back and cling to the rest of these nations, these which remain among you, and intermarry with them, so that you associate with them and they with you, know with certainty that the Lord your God will not continue to drive these nations out from before you, but they shall be a snare and a trap to you, and a whip on your side, and thorns in your eyes, until you perish from off this good land which the Lord your God has given you. You can't do this on your own. God has to do it. And if you turn to these gods of these other nations, intermarry with them, and forget the Lord your God, then what good are you? Remember, going all the way back in previous books, we've studied that God wants to set Israel apart as a nation totally committed to him. That's his witness to the rest of the world, an example to the rest of the world. He's purified and cleansed them up to this point, to the point where he was able to drive these people out of the promised land and give it to them just as he promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But if they turn away from him, then they're no longer his witness. What good are they? They may as well just be thrown off the land. And God is not going to support them if they follow other gods. Verse 14. Now behold, today I am going the way of all the earth, and you know in all your hearts and in all your souls that not one word of all the good words which the Lord your God spoke concerning you has failed. All have been fulfilled for you. Not one of them has failed. God has been faithful 100%. Even though Israel stumbled a couple of times, God has been 100% faithful. Verse 15, and it shall come about that just as all the good words which the Lord your God spoke to you have come upon you, so the Lord will bring upon you all the threats until he has destroyed you from off this good land which the Lord your God has given you. God made a covenant with them. You follow me, you trust me, you obey me, you love me, and I will drive these people out. If you turn your back on me, no, just the opposite will happen. You'll be disciplined, driven off the land. Verse 16, when you transgress the covenant of the Lord your God, which he commanded you, and go and serve other gods and bow down to them, then the anger of the Lord will burn against you, and you shall perish quickly from off the good land which he has given you. He reiterates a statement of fact that God's covenant calls for them to be loyal to him, worship him only, not worship the other gods. And if they go back on their word, no, he will not stand by them. In fact, he will drive them off the land. Now we're going to stop there today as far as chapter 23. But remember, we mentioned before that sadly, down the road, they do turn their back on the one true God, the God of their fathers. They do worship other gods. These people do become thorns in their side. And eventually, many years later, they are driven off the land. But God's not going to go back on his promise. So in the future, even our future, it's still to come, when Christ returns a second time, the Bible prophecies say that they will be restored to this promised land. But for now, they're in it. Now they're secure. There's peace. God is, through Joshua, is reaffirming that he'll stand with them if they continue to worship and trust and obey him and love him. And now next time we're going to see that he repeats this message again to the people at large and adds a couple of admonishments to them. But for now, we'll stop. I hope it's been meaningful and interesting to you. Hope you'll watch the last one in this series. In the meantime, God bless. Bye-bye.